Welcome to this gathering of the Manatee Unitarian Universalist Fellowship, where for over 60 years diversity of faith, race, ethnicity, sexual and gender identity have been honored by people of courage and vision. We are a covenanted community bound together by our belief in freedom of worship, love, and respect. If you are visiting with us this morning or searching for a spiritual home, we welcome you as our guests and extend an invitation to join us for refreshments and conversations after the service. There will be a social justice committee meeting about 15-20 minutes after the service in this sanctuary. On Saturday, June 8th, at 10 a.m., Randy McCrae will lead part 2 of a 4-part exploration of marketing our fellowship. There were about a dozen folks yesterday who brainstormed about 30 things we could do to promote us. It was a wonderful gathering. Carol Alt wants to remind us that the play that we had here a few months back about Juliana versus the U.S. government regarding the youth who are involved with the lawsuit against the federal government regarding climate change. That is moving ahead in the trial, and there we can watch this Tuesday, June 4th, the actual case. It's going to be heard 2 p.m. Pacific time, so it'll be 5 p.m. our time. And the hashtag to hook to that is hashtag all eyes on Juliana. If you have more questions about that, please seek out Carol Alt. Where's Carol? She's there in the back row. I think that's it for announcements that I have today. So we will begin our service with a prelude. I invite Doris Sutliff to come forward to light our chalice. Please join me in reading the chalice lighting words found in our program. We light this chalice to remind ourselves of that flame which burns in each of our hearts, remembering that when flame meets flame, match meets candle, the two become one, belonging to each other. Many flames join together to form the warmth of community, of congregation, of city, of nation. We gather here together to remind ourselves of our inner lights and to join with others to light the way to a good world community. But before we can shine a light on that path, we must remind ourselves of who we are. We must know who we are. We are Unitarians, Universalists, friends, visitors, seekers. Let us worship together. Thank you, Doris. Our opening words this morning. Our church exists to proclaim the gospel that each human being is infinitely precious, that the meaning of our lives lies hidden in our interactions with each other. We wish to be a church where we encounter each other with wonder, appreciation, and expectation, where we call out of each other strengths, wisdom, and compassion that we never knew we had. Our opening hymn this morning is number 305 in our gray hymnal, De Coloris, and we'll sing all verses.
I will not repeat the interlude after every verse.
Please rise in body or spirit. All the colors, yes, the colors we see in the springtime with all of its flowers. All the colors, when the sunlight shines out through a rift in the cloud and it showers. All the colors, as a rainbow appears when a storm cloud is touched by the sun. All the colors abound for the whole world around and for everyone under the sun. All the colors, yes, the colors of people parading on by with their banners. All the colors, yes, the colors of pennants and streamers and plumes and bandanas. All the colors, yes, the color of people now taking their place in the sun. The colors about for the whole world around and for everyone under the sun. All the colors, yes, the black and the white and the red and the brown and the yellow. All the colors of people who smile and shake hands and say hello. All the colors, yes, the colors of people who know that their freedom is won. All the colors about for the whole world around and for everyone under the sun. De colores he visto los campos en la primavera. De colores Please be seated. Please join me in reading, a responsive reading. We are here to face the truth about ourselves, about our faith we love, and the ways we presently serve others and the world. We say we are open and diverse. We want to answer the call to service to a world that needs our message, our hope, our revived energy. This past year, we have examined Unitarian Universalism, its history, its people, its theology. Perhaps it has given us a deeper perspective about this faith, but there is still one more thing that I want to share regarding this mantle we wear called Unitarian Universalism. There was a story that popped up this week on my social media with several different versions that I thought I would share this story with you. I'm not sure of its origin. There seems to be several origin stories of it as well. It is the story of the perfect heart. Perhaps you may have heard of it. In a very distant place and long ago, there was a country that boasted of having the most perfect hearts. Everyone who traveled to this country would remark, yes, its people have the most beautiful hearts of any people anywhere. One day, a young man entered the town square and declared that his heart was the most perfect of all the hearts in the country. People gathered around and he showed them his heart. Ooh, the people exclaimed, "You do have the most perfect, beautiful heart we have ever seen. No one's heart could compare to this heart's perfection." There was an old man who was walking by and overheard the crowd's praises for this young man's heart. He decided to take a closer look. When he saw the young man's heart, he scoffed. "Your heart is not the most perfect. My heart is far more perfect than yours." The old man revealed his heart, and while its beat was strong, it was riddled with holes and ragged places and scars. The young man in the crowd laughed at him at his folly, but the old man raised his hand to silence them. "See this bump? That's when I met my first true love. The air was crisp and pure. The birds seemed to sing just for us. What a beautiful day it was. But see this pockmark next to it? That's when my true love broke my heart and left me. It pained me then, and its memory pricks my heart even today. And this crevice, this is where I gave a piece of my heart to the one who became my life partner. What a joyous life we had together. This scratch here is the time we had such a fight that we almost parted ways, but with forgiveness we mended our hearts. And here is a tear from my heart when she died. A part of my heart died with her that day. But see this bump? That was the time when we adopted our daughter after we learned that we could not have biological children. And oh, how this bump grew with love. Even the scratches and dents and bangs we had along the way, we learned to forgive one another, and this bump on my heart grew even larger. You see, every scar, every hole, every ragged edge represents a person to whom I have given a piece of my heart to. They in turn give me a piece of their hearts. But the pieces don't always fit. And sometimes I give a piece of my heart to another who does not return a piece of their heart to me. And so I have a hole which reminds me of them. The holes stay open because they remind me of the love I have for them. Someday, perhaps, they may return and fill the space I have waiting for them. Loving another is taking a chance. At this, the young man in the crowd grew silent. The young man looked at his perfect heart and tore a piece out and gave it to the old man, who in turn tore a piece of his heart to fill the hole in the young man's heart. It didn't fit exactly, as there were some jagged pieces, but the young man felt more love that was not there before because the old man's heart flowed love into his. They embraced and walked away from the crowd together, side by side. When I was an intern minister at the congregation in San Diego, the youth there would come to the front of the congregation and recite their covenant of church. We are the church of the open minds, loving hearts, helping hands. They had some choreographed moves with this mantra. It was a simple yet powerful way of reminding our youth of our guiding principles. Now, I know this phrase is not unique to Unitarian Universalism. Other faiths use this phrase as well. But does this phrase express who we are in Manatee County? Are we the church of the open mind, loving hearts, helping hands? Or are we like the young man who spouts how perfect our hearts are, but have not yet placed our convictions into practice to receive the scars, holes, and jagged edges of love received, given, and possibly lost? In Nogales, New Mexico, Scott Warren, Unitarian Universalist, is on trial for placing his Unitarian Universalist values on the line by providing humanitarian aid to migrants who are crossing the border. Our government is stating that his religious freedom to express his values are not worthy of being protected in this country. He faces a possible sentence of 20 years for being a Unitarian Universalist who dared to declare his religious freedom and conviction to serve humanity. Eden Rogers and her spouse, Brandy Welch, in South Carolina, were rejected outright as foster parents by Miracle Hill Ministries because their faith is Unitarian Universalism and because they are a same-gender couple. 1,300 children are on the wait list in South Carolina for foster homes. It seems to be more important that Miracle Hill Ministries has religious freedom to discriminate than to find loving homes for these children. ACLU has filed a lawsuit on the couple's behalf. Levi Draheim, Unitarian Universalist youth from Satellite Beach, Florida, is one of 20 youth across the country who are suing the federal government in the court case Juliana versus United States for violating their Fifth Amendment right not to be deprived of life, liberty, or property without due process of law by the government's refusal to reduce carbon emissions to 350 parts per million by 2100. Our Unitarian Universalist principle, stating we are an integral part of the interconnected web of life, is at stake here. Scott Warren may lose his freedom, and all of us will lose our protected religious freedom to offer humanitarian aid to those in need as a result. Eden Rogers and Brandy Welch may lose their battle to be foster parents because they are not of the right faith or the right gender couple makeup, according to a breach in separation of church and state in South Carolina. And as a result, all of our religious freedoms will be diminished by state governments who seek to only endorse conservative Christian faiths. Levi Draheim and others may lose their court battle to protect their future environment in favor of corporate profits today. And we all lose the future our children and grandchildren could possibly have. We are Unitarian Universalists. We have a proud legacy of social justice activism in this country to open our hearts, to give our hearts to the oppressed, and fight for justice. Our spiritual ancestors marched with Susan B. Anthony and Reverend Martin Luther King. We gathered in Phoenix to stand up to inhumane state laws against migrants. We marched in Raleigh, North Carolina, with Reverend William Barber for a moral revival. And in the process, we have faced defeat and discouragement and pain in solidarity. But if we have shared our hearts with one another in the process, then we are not deterred because we felt the strength of our love moving us forward towards justice. We are Unitarian Universalists. We have a community here whose mission calls us to be a beacon of religious freedom, supporting lifelong spiritual growth and working for social justice with compassion and love. How willing are we to commit to making this mission a reality? Are we willing to offer our hearts to others only to have them turned aside and feel the pain of that loss and then go out and give our hearts again in the hopes that someone, maybe you, will give their heart in return? What does being a beacon even look like in this place? How are you a beacon today? We are Unitarian Universalists. How are we a beacon today? Some possible ways. After the service, speak with someone you don't usually talk with. Take time to greet our visitors. Offer to volunteer to do a task when the task needed is mentioned. Tell your friends what this church community means to you. A wise minister friend of mine once said, "You know you are a committed member to your congregation when it has broken your heart." The task when that happens is to forgive and begin again. Yes, it may leave a scar on that heart of ours, but it is this level of love that will transform us into a community. Forgiveness is a spiritual discipline that needs to be returned to again and again. It ain't easy. But if we are serious about supporting lifelong spiritual growth, then we need to know this is the work. Forgiveness is the work. And justice in the form of beloved community is the ultimate goal. This is spiritual work we are engaged in. The story of the young man could have ended in a different way, I suppose. The young man in the crowd, instead of listening to the old man's story of how his giving and receiving love made his heart into a mosaic of life filled with love, could have chased the old man out of town. The young man's perfect heart that had not yet learned to love could have become hardened like porcelain in time. It retains its perfect shape, but it is no longer able to be resilient and responsive to the needs around him. He would grow bitter in time, a sort of Dorian Gray, fixed in time as perfect form while inside his heart decays. Without listening to the old man's witness, the community itself also hardens in their treatment of the other. They long for the perfect community in form alone, but not in substance. A hardened community that seeks outward appearances of perfection soon abhors anyone who does not meet that standard. They begin to chase away those whose hearts are not perfect in outward appearance. They segregate them. They outlaw their presence in public arenas. They remove public support from them. They pass laws condemning anyone who violates their notions of a perfect heart. And even without realizing it is happening, they incite hatred and violence against these others, then blame these others for their fate. We are Unitarian Universalists. We have a role to play here in Manatee County to be a beacon of religious freedom, supporting lifelong spiritual growth, and working for social justice with compassion and love. It only takes a little leaven to make bread rise so that it is edible and nurturing to the body. Yes, we are a small congregation, but we can be that leaven in this community. May our hearts be willing to be shared fully with one another so that love will grow strong here and fan out into all of Manatee County. Blessed be.
May it be so.
Our hymn is number 298. Please rise in body or spirit. Wake now my senses. Wake now my senses and hear the earth call. Feel the deep power of being in all. Keep with the web of creation your vow. Giving, receiving, as love shows us how. Wake now my reason. Reach out to the noon. Join with each a pilgrim who quests for the true. Honor the beauty and wisdom of time. Suffer thy living and praise the sublime. Wake now compassion. Give heed to voices of suffering fill the wide sky. Take as your neighbor both stranger and friend, praying and striving their hardship to end. Two more verses, please.
I'm sorry. I haven't got those marked. Okay.
Wake now my conscience, with justice thy guide. Join with all people whose rights are denied. Take not for granted a privileged place. God's love embraces the whole human race. Wake now my vision of ministry clear. Brighten my pathway with radiance here. Mingle my calling with all who will share. Work toward a planet transformed by our care. Please be seated. We come to a time in our service where we lift up the prayers of our community. Today is Al Yusak's 89th birthday. Prayers for Joel Bastow, one of our seasonal folks who was in physical rehabilitation back home in Delaware. Joy and congratulations to Peg Green for having one of her fabric tapestries chosen as the cover of a new edition of the UU Pocket Guidebook. Gratitude for the many hands that cleaned the kitchen. Gratitude for Randall McCrae's, for his leadership in the first of 4 workshops on marketing. And sadly this week, we had 12 people who were shot in Virginia Beach. So this makes, according to the Washington Post, 115 mass shootings since January in our country. So we hold their families in our thoughts and prayers, and may we also consider writing letters to our senators, to vote on a gun bill that was sent to them from the House in Congress. There are many who aren't able to be among us and might enjoy a note in the mail, a phone call, a visit. If you notice someone who is not here today, please let them know that you are thinking about them and that we care for them. And there are also many in our community who are undergoing transitions in their life, moves to assisted living, moves to be closer to family, grieving the loss of loved ones, health concerns that require adjustments to activities. Please offer a listening ear and other forms of support to our friends and members who are traveling these roads of change. Now let us hold these joys and sorrows and those that have not yet found expression in our hearts in a time of silence. May our hearts be inspired to offer support to one another. Blessed be and amen. We say in our church that the offering is a sacrament of the free church. What we mean by that is that we believe it is a blessing to be able to govern and support our religious community ourselves, to make possible by our generosity everything we dream of and do to live out our shared values. Every week, we lift up the spiritual value of generosity by taking an offering for the ministries of this fellowship. Our plate, then, as it is passed among us, becomes filled with the evidence of that generosity. It is our harvest, gathered in every week for that which most nourishes us. The ushers will now come among you to receive the gifts of the congregation. The morning offering will be most gratefully received. Our closing hymn is number 145 as Tranquil Streams. Please rise in body or spirit. As tranquil streams that meet and merge and flow as one to seek the sea, our kindred hearts and minds unite to build a church that shall be free, free from the bonds that bind the mind to narrow thought and lifeless creed, freed from a social code that fails to serve the cause of human need. A freedom that reveres the past, but trusts a dawning future more, and bids the soul in search of truth adventure boldly and explore. Prophetic church, the future waits your liberating ministry. Go forward in the power of love, proclaim the truth that makes us free. Please be seated. And I call Doris to come forward. Doris Sutliff to come forward to extinguish our flame. Please join me. We extinguish this flame, but not the light of truth, the warmth of community, or the fire of commitment. These we carry in our hearts until we are together again. We are Unitarian Universalists. There is only one thing that we need do this week, and that is to love the world. Go and love the world into life. Go in peace.